What does it take to be a successful speaker? Today, we're going to be speaking with JD Gershbein about this, and he certainly knows what it's about. Since 2006, JD has been at the forefront of advancing the ideals of the digital world, something we can't get away from anymore. He's been inspiring opportunity-oriented professionals and companies to harness the power of online media to elevate their profiles, engage their communities, and, of course, to win new business. As one of the world's foremost and first independent LinkedIn consultants, JD is widely regarded as a thought leader in the areas of personal branding, social networking, video storytelling, and social entrepreneurship. And as a business psychologist, a speaker, a facilitator, and a media producer, JD has educated and entertained people all over the globe. And he's focused on creating a competitive advantage in today's digital age. So he certainly has experience in so many different areas, and I can't wait to hear what he has to tell us about becoming and being a successful speaker. I'm going to wait to tell you a few other things about JD that I think are fascinating, but I want him to tell you about that rather than me just say that. So welcome, JD. It's a pleasure to have you on this interview.
It's a pleasure to be had, Lynda. Nice to be with you.
Great. I'm looking forward to this. And JD, as an early adopter of LinkedIn social media, we know it's been around for a long time. How did you go from there to becoming a LinkedIn strategist?
Really, for me, it's just how I've kind of accrued experiential knowledge. I've done a lot of things. I've been exposed to a lot of disciplines. And when I came to LinkedIn, I felt it was everything I had ever trained for, all converging in one spot. I have an English background. I know the language. I studied psychology. I come from a medical family. Both my parents were artists and scientists. And I've appreciated the neuroscience behind what I do. And I have a performance art background. So I've been on stage. I know stagecraft. I can comport myself the way that a speaker should comport. And when LinkedIn kind of came, it was, again, one thing tied up in a beautiful package with a pink bow, and all I had to do was open it. And I've really made it my own. That's what I've tried to do. That's what I impart to my clients. So my transition was very quick. I literally became a LinkedIn consultant the moment I created my account on the site.
And you say you became a consultant the moment you created. What do you mean by that?
Well, I never shut up about LinkedIn. The way that I'm hardwired, I thought it was great. And again, tailor-made for me. And I kept running in my circles, talking about this. Many of my colleagues were not even on LinkedIn. I'm an early adopter, mid-stage early adoption. So I came in at about the 22 million or so user level, and just was kind of espousing the virtues of this site. I had a vision for what it could do for me. And when I created my profile, although the first incarnation of that profile was very crude, didn't talk about the speaking career I was building, I was moving forward in a way where I was taking ownership of my own story. And before too long, I had kind of branded as this LinkedIn specialist, someone who had some keen insights into what this was and what it could do for folks.
And you say something very interesting, because I know a lot of people, and we're not digging deep into LinkedIn, but one of the common critiques people have of LinkedIn, of people's profiles, is you need to tell a story. Don't just put a resume up there. And so that fits right in with you, is wanting to tell a story so people want to hear more. Is that right?
There's no branding that goes on in a resume. It's a static piece. It's like Latin. It's a bunch of past tense verbs that start each bullet point, and it's still a barrier to entry to get a job or get a better job. But the LinkedIn profile has ascended in prominence as the de facto first point of reference on business professionals. So when they hear of you, when they learn of you, when they catch wind of you, where are they going first? To your LinkedIn profile.
Right. That's how we check things out before we get on a call with somebody, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, here's my favorite question for you. because you are who you are. And that is, I know you're in Chicago.
I am.
And I know that you are a user practitioner of the techniques of improv and had your training at Chicago Second City.
Mhm.
Tell us how you've used that background in your approach to educating and entertaining others.
Well, improv is coming on. I think it's an indispensable skill at this point. I believe it's an outgrowth of creativity. It's tied to creativity, human creativity, and human ingenuity as well. The ability to be spontaneous and extemporaneous, to wing it, to be on the hoof, on the fly, do things where you don't know what's coming next. And I'm on record as saying that I'm at my best when I don't know what's coming next. So improv training actually frees the mind. It teaches us to be present in the moment. It teaches us to extend and expand conversations or open them if we have no point of origin, and to really respect and communicate and listen to a scene partner. Everybody that I talk to is a scene partner, and my responsibility is to listen, be responsive, be supportive, and carry this conversation forward in a way where both parties benefit. There's equal exchange, and together we kind of create something. If you're not creating with someone else, you're basically just performing a monologue. But in our digital age, where we're now confined to the online world and we're basically communicating our value off an internet page or on a web camera, we have to be spontaneous. We have to find things. We have to somehow search our minds and work with our brains in sync to produce some kind of desired effect for people. And that's what I try to do. I don't know what's coming next. I honestly don't. That thing I just said, I didn't know I was going to say it until I said it.
And that's great, because you said something that's very important to me as well, because speakers like to speak. But what we're seeing, and I do a lot of training in this area to train other people, we need to listen, because if we listen, that's when we engage. But if we're just talking, we're not relating to the person. We're just sending information out, but maybe not responding to exactly what they're saying at the moment. And we're too
That's
scripted.
true. The communication platform on the stage, it's not just the physical feet on the floor in front of an audience. And I pine for the days when we can do that again, Lynda. I'm ready to get back in front of live audiences, but we're in a global pandemic now, so that's in a medically induced coma. But for the time being, on the virtual platform, we have to be ourselves. The same authenticity that should shine through on stage has to come through the web camera. And we are who we are, and we want to get the audience on our side. We want them to be receptive to what we have to say, and then we want to draw the energy back from the audience, even an unseen audience, and deliver our best.
And that's why I find, even when we're doing virtual trainings or presentations, we want to see that audience open their cameras, depending how many people are there. But we want to see, because that's where we do get so much of our energy as speakers.
I insist on it. You come to
Mhm.
my event, your webcam is on,
Right. I feel
your
the same
video
way.
is on, and your
And,
microphone is unmuted.
right,
Unless, of course, you've got dogs barking or kids in the background,
right,
or
right.
kids barking and dogs crying in the
That
background.
could be anything, right? Or a lawnmower's going, or whatever it might. We've heard it all this year, haven't we?
We have.
So this is a question that I often ask a lot of speakers, and I coach speakers about this. And my question is, do you prepare for your presentations? Because you said you're very spontaneous and you don't know what you're going to say next. I'm assuming there is some level of preparation that you do, or is there?
Don't let my penchant for improvisation fool you, Lynda. I'm well prepared and I'm well rehearsed, and I am constantly rehearsing. I'm constantly upgrading and refining my stagecraft. I do it as I'm working out. I do it in the shower. I do it behind the wheel of the car. I do it on my way to the gig. I do it in the green room. I do it literally until the moment I take the stage. So my slide deck is more of an accompaniment piece. I don't have a lot of text on my slide deck. I'm a conceptual speaker. I work with images. So I have very good musculature in my eyes, and unless I have a confidence monitor right in front of me, I'll tilt my head just enough so I can see what image I have, and hopefully I have a good responsive remote that when I advance the slide, I'm seamless in the way that I'm bringing in content around that slide so that the eyes of the audience are on me. I don't have a companion piece. I don't put my slide thumbnails on a piece of paper so people can take notes. They'll supply their own notes. But the key, I think, to speaking and keeping audiences engaged and off their phones is to truly have something for them to see, have something to hear at the same time, but always following the speaker. Have enough mobility where you're not too much in motion, too kinetic, because that is a distraction, but just to kind of meet people where they are, find those sets of eyes in the front couple rows and track with them, find the receptive smiles. And as a speaker, I feel I excel at that. I try to win the audience over immediately from second one and hope that their last impression meets their expectations with the first impression.
That's great. That's great. And something you just said about look at their eyes, or look at the friendly person, look at the person who's engaging with you or seems very open to you. I often tell people that when they're nervous, find the friendly face in the audience or the person you know, at least when you get started. But that brings me to my next question. Do you get nervous?
Never. Stage fright went out the window a long time ago. I really thrive on the stage. I'm in my element on the stage because I'm comfortable in my own skin. I understand what my strengths and limitations are. I play to the strengths. I acknowledge my weaknesses and I move away from the weaknesses. So did I have stage fright at one time? I think everybody does. The fear of public speaking is pervasive. But my first day of freshman year in high school, I joined my high school radio station at New Trier West in Northfield, Illinois, and became a broadcaster at 14 years old. Had my own Panasonic tape recorder, carried it around to do interviews with athletes and politicians and celebrities. So I was very accustomed to putting myself out there in a way to be received, which is what speakers do. Speakers are putting themselves out in a way where, okay, here I am. You're either going to, again, win over the audience quickly, ideally, or you're going to stumble your way through it. And, you know, we're tougher crowds than we used to be, right? If the speaker isn't prepared or doesn't respect the audience or shows up looking a bit on the disheveled side, are we going to be as attentive as we would if we were treated favorably by a speaker who looks the part, carries him or herself well up on the stage, and really looks like they did what they needed to do to put themselves in position to win?
And doesn't make excuses. And if things go wrong, the improv comes in there, just pick up and keep moving.
Hey, who hasn't stemmed the tide of a difficult technical difficulty?
We've all been there. And I think people are understanding, as long as you don't let that stop your presentation and you don't have a plan B. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
why people get frustrated with speakers if they don't have that plan B.
You got to be seamless. May I share a story?
Absolutely.
Because we're urged to be storytellers these days, Lynda. So I'm speaking at a Rotary Club in San Francisco. This was years ago, and a big crowd. And much as I didn't like it or want it, they stuck me in during the lunch hour. So people are getting served as I'm speaking. We've all been there, haven't we? We've all been there with the plates clanging and the service staff wheeling the main courses out. And they were doing this as I was speaking. And I never really felt that I could get my momentum down. And about 10 or 15 minutes into the program, not everybody had been served yet. And there's a huge crash. So some servers barreling through the door, the cart tumbles, loud noise, a disruptive noise, a complete derailment of my train of thought. And in one seamless maneuver, all I said was, clean up aisle 4. And it was a thing of beauty. People
you could not have planned that, right?
What else are you going to do? I mean, we've all had our slide decks get stuck, or the remote that doesn't work, or the microphone that's not projecting our voice. You have to weather it. You have to take it with the proverbial grain of salt, but you have to have some fun with it. And I'm the speaker that has fun with it.
Why not? That's better. Don't take yourself too seriously either. Right?
Never.
So here's a question I have for you.
All right.
As a speech and language pathologist, I care a lot about the voice and the vocal instrument because we do need to use it. Without it, we cannot deliver our message in the same way. Is there anything you do to care or prepare your voice when you're giving your presentations or trainings?
There were some speakers who gave me some tips about like lemon tea before a talk to soothe the throat. I know that there are some commercial products out there for speakers. I actually did try one or two. It was soothing, but I'm not sure it made me a more compelling speaker. Preparing the voice, absolutely. I do exercise the larynx, the laryngeal muscles, the jaw, the throat. Absolutely. Some stretching exercises on the face and all. I'm very conscious of my posture, and the more I speak from the diaphragm, I think the better my voice comes out. There are certain terms and phrases that I try to avoid because, in all candor, I had to overcome a speech impediment in, say, around the 3rd grade. So I did work with a speech pathologist, and to this day, there are terms that I purposely try to stay away from because I know I'm going to struggle with them. And my ability to improvise has generated around some of that difficulty as well.
So there's a lot of mental gymnastics that may go on.
Oh, I'm working.
And in
Don't
full,
let my smooth my smooth appearance fool you. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts that help me speak.
And in full disclosure, as a former New Yorker or a former New Yorker, when I thought about how I was going to introduce you, my challenge became that you were a speaker, facilitator, and media producer, because my natural, and usually I speak without the accent, but naturally I might say a speaker, a facilitator, and a media producer. And that's not how people see me. So I modify my accent, but sometimes we come up with words that are going to just throw us a little bit, and we have to think a little bit harder.
We also take shortcuts with the language, and we also ingrain certain descriptions or phrases or terms that we know we can say, and they won't sound canned. And I think that's a huge piece of speaking today is being able to look away and not have dependence on your slides, but really find that wave in the audience, feel their vibe, and maneuver in a way where it starts to come out of you effortlessly. There's nothing quite as refreshing for me as an audience member to see an effortless speaker, where it just flows, and I'm understanding what the speaker says, and I'm learning, or I'm ideating, or I'm cognating, and it's a beautiful thing when it all comes together.
And along those lines, like you were saying, if you're communicating, it doesn't always matter the words you're using. So you don't need to have the $1 million words if you can say it simply and people just get it and you seem very authentic.
That's true.
I think people stress over looking for the right word. That may be a word that people don't know what it means. That disrupts the flow. So again, know your audience on what their level of what level they are, but what vocabulary do you really need to use?
That's true, and your ability to swap out words is also a piece of the improv that I bring in, because I'm a fairly learned guy. I love words, and I know some beauties, and I've studied beauties. I get a word of the day sent to my inbox every day. I'm adding to my vocabulary as we speak. But there's some words, as you know, Lynda, you can't use them at a conference or in a conference room, because the people will look at each other and go, "What? Where's my dictionary?"
Let me give you a quick example of that, because I do get a word a day from 2 different sources. So I look, and some of those words you'll never use, but I came across a gem, and that word was hypercranioloquy.
Okay.
What does that mean? So, and I use this in my workshops. Well, what it means is speaking in a way that's above your brain. So just the word itself is exactly what's wrong with it. Why speak in a word that you're saying, what did she mean by that? And then they're behind me in my message. So use words that fit. And actually, JD, it's not even a real word when I actually looked it up further, but you can analyze each part of it.
Well, but to your point, speaking over one's head or speaking under one's head. I mean, you you have to try to meet people where they live. Very difficult in the professional speaking world when you consider the variety of learning curves out there and learning styles that people bring to a talk. But in the virtual world now, where obviously if there's a word there that really strikes people, they can look it up as they're listening to you. But at the same time, languaging and upskilling oneself as a speaker in language and saying things that you haven't said it in a way before is important.
Mhm.
I've gone through numerous incarnations of my talks, my keynotes, my breakouts, and new pieces emerge. I discard what I think isn't working and I bring in new ways of communicating. I think as speakers, we have to be good change managers and bring that into our branding as well.
Exactly. I think we have to be flexible because what we gave as a speech 3 years ago wouldn't be relevant today. So we have to
Absolutely.
know. And again, the other thing you mentioned, I think is a really good point, JD, is your audience may not be one level of education. So you may have somebody who might understand that word, somebody who might be insulted if you speak too low, and you have to balance speaking to a very heterogeneous audience and come across well doing that. It's not easy.
It's not. And in the LinkedIn world, I mean,
Mhm.
you're all across the spectrum.
Mhm.
Two people can be sitting next to each other. One is an absolute beginner or newbie, and then I've got a power user. So
Mhm.
I don't want to bore the power users,
Sure.
but at the same time, I don't want to lose the newbies. I have to find that happy medium where someone at whatever level of literacy they are in the subject that I'm bringing, they'll get something out of it. They'll be able to advance to the next level, and they'll
Mhm.
be able to write down things that they can apply to their businesses immediately. I
Mhm.
speak in a business framework, so obviously I'm brought in to educate,
Right.
or as I like to say, edumacate. And
Educate.
edumacate. And so people have to have takeaways in the business speaker world. What are your takeaways, JD? So my takeaways are always that people are going to learn how to put their own spin on what it is I'm speaking about, because I'm not the how-to guy anymore.
Mhm.
You want to learn how to use LinkedIn, you can look at YouTube. There's plenty of tutorials ad nauseum. But if you want to know the underlying behaviors, what truly creates competitive advantage, what works and what doesn't, and why does it work and why doesn't it work, that's where I kind of have floated into, is in that space of neuroscience and
Mhm.
psychology and art, where they all kind of converge into
Mhm.
a way of just getting ourselves through the digital world.
Mhm. And now you mentioned something which leads me to my next question. You're talking about the digital world, and I know you do video marketing. And as you know, my husband is a videographer and does video marketing and has done a lot for me. How do you leverage or build video marketing to help your brand?
Well, we know by now that video is the most powerful builder of brand we have. And if you're going to disseminate content, especially across a site like LinkedIn or any of the other social media, eh, you've got to compete for the hearts and minds. That this is the attention economy.
Mhm.
We have to have something special to break through at this point. It's not just about having video or spending money to cut one video. It's cutting video that people will want to watch.
Mhm.
And it's very close to becoming a mainstream practice. We're seeing more and more people mobilize around it. And as they do, we're going to become even more snobbier about it. We're going to scroll right past something we should be watching unless we have the impetus to watch it. And how do
Mhm.
you create impetus to watch video? Everything. They've got to know who you are. They've got to know what you stand for. It's got to look good. I'm not a big fan of just turning the camera on yourself and penny for your thoughts right in front of it. It's really about something scripted, something storyboard, but yet when the camera goes on, something extemporaneous. So you don't look like a deer in the headlights, and you're
Mhm.
really out there parsing out your value in a meaningful way.
Mhm.
And that said, I applaud people who have the voice. So the first step in capitalizing on the opportunity that video marketing affords is to just participate and do it and create
Mhm.
something.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you'll
And
get better at it. Everybody does.
oh my goodness, we look at videos that we did maybe 5 years ago, and I
Sure.
just did that recently, and it's like, whoa, things have changed in 5 years, not just in the
Yeah.
world, but in the way that I interact
Yeah.
with the camera.
Or what
So,
was I thinking with that shirt?
oh my goodness. Well, I focus on that, but didn't that sound very stilted? Yeah, and then you get more comfortable, just like with any type of public speaking.
Mhm.
You get more comfortable, and then the camera just becomes your communication partner, and it gets easier and
Your
easier.
friend. Learn to love the lens.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. And that is a challenge. And that's different from the live audiences that you crave, or we crave getting back to, because that lens is the audience. And we want so much to talk to everybody who's on the screen, and it doesn't work in the virtual world. So that is a challenge, isn't it?
It is. And that's why we sometimes let video supplant what we would do as professional speakers. So it's important that people get an idea as to who we are, how we communicate, what we're speaking about, our topics, so to speak. But at this stage of the game, and boy, I hate to use that cliche, but I have to use it. At this stage of the game, uh, we are competing for people's time, the privilege of their attention. And again, the content has to be compelling. You've got to keep people focused and wrapped on you. And when you do, you've got a chance at winning them over.
Mhm. And sometimes shorter is better, right? People never
True.
say, oh, I wish it were, you'd rather them say, I wish it were longer than, oh, I wish he'd stop already. Right? So
Oh,
you
there's
have to,
plenty of videos that kind of drone on,
oh
and
yeah.
you wish they would have been much, much shorter. And then there are short videos, sure, that are little bursts of micro knowledge, and you want
Mhm,
more. You just want to
mhm,
keep feeding it into yourself. But finding the right blend, the right time. I'm on record as saying that if a video is a little on the longer side, it's fine as long as it keeps folks interested.
mhm, mhm. Now, what would be your advice for somebody who is just starting in the speaking business, wants to build their career as a professional speaker? Do you have any words of wisdom to help them along the way?
Well, a long time ago, Lynda, I heard that a writer writes. Just apply that. A speaker
Mhm,
speaks.
mhm,
And at this stage of the game, when you're cracking into the speaking trade, there's a bit of dues paying that needs to be accomplished. And you speak for free. You speak whenever you can, wherever you can, whenever you're asked. Everybody is launching podcasts now, and
mhm,
guesting on podcast is a great way to develop the idea of projecting and expressing and finding a speaking style that's very
mhm,
important.
mhm,
So there's no substitute for
mhm,
experience. You need the
mhm.
experience, and you get better with each talk. Ideally, each piece is an incremental build on the one that precedes it.
Mhm. And that's one part that also helps with the people who do have the public speaking anxiety. The more you do it, the better you get at accepting some of the adrenaline and just moving with it, as opposed to letting it stop you.
Yeah, I think conquering the fear is a huge piece for anything, whether it's public speaking, whether it's writing a book, whether it's even making a social media post at this point.
Mhm,
Uh, we're
mhm,
all we're all ensconced in the comfort zone, and when
mhm,
we expand the comfort zone, because we know there's no growth in the comfort zone, but when we make these little kicks out and kind of move ourselves forward towards that goal, we do get better at it, and the
mhm,
fear diminishes, and that's a
mhm.
beautiful feeling. And then our authenticity takes over, and we can be autonomous and free, and the audience will like us.
Right, right. So this is great. I love this information. I don't even want to say interview. I love this conversation that we had, because it felt more like that than just the questions, just to learn more about
Mhm.
you and learn the tips about being a successful speaker.
Well,
JD,
I'm
if
still learning. I'm still up for getting a tip or two myself.
aren't we all? Aren't we all? And that's a great tip to tell somebody, that we never do stop learning. Uh,
Nobody's
JD,
an expert. Yeah.
right. Even if they think they are, right? JD, if people want to get in touch with you, how do you suggest they do that?
Well, it shouldn't surprise anybody that I'm out there on all the platforms. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can search for me under my initials, JD, and I should pop right up for them. And I also maintain a company called Owlish Communications, and they can find me at Owlish, like the owl,
Mhm,
communications.com. That's the training arm of my brand.
mhm. Okay. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you. I know we'll have more conversations beyond this series, but thanks for being part of it, JD.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Have a great day.